I don't say that when I'm in the Northland. So it is true. Because when I come down here, I feel so at home and comfortable amongst South Islanders because they're my kind of people. So you guys are going to be officially the biggest meeting we've had. We've got an announcement to make, and we'll make it shortly. I never thought for a second that I would be travelling the country, formed a new party. My poor wife groaned when I told her what I was planning. But what I've been really encouraged by is the people that have joined the party and that have volunteered and given their time and their money and their passion to help us get off the ground. And there's a whole bunch of you from the Canterbury region and the South Island in general that have gone on board with us. And it constantly, it gets me going. We have a big announcement. Today we got a phone call from the Electoral Commission. We are now a registered political party. So you heard it here first, okay? And it's kind of nice to be at our biggest meeting so far. We had a big meeting in Wellington, but you guys top it. And you're pretty much, you're in the top 3 for anthems, so you're doing really well. Signed, a Bill of Rights is the core of that. And if we treated the Bill of Rights as the sacred document that it is and should be, we wouldn't have any of these protests, any of this convoy, any of this discrimination or division, or just sheer nastiness that we've seen over the last couple of years. We wouldn't have it because they wouldn't have been able to pass the laws to enforce it because they're breaches of our Bill of Rights. So this government have walked all over our Bill of Rights from the time they got in. And these are the main points. If we treat that as a constitutional document and we don't breach it, we will have our country back on track. And the most relevant one for us at the moment is the right to refuse to undergo medical treatment. You have the right to refuse to undergo that. And that's a God-given right. And if I thought of a reason to protest, body autonomy would have to be at the top of the list. And if I do not want to live in a country where the government can stop Kiwis coming home. If you've got a passport and you're a New Zealander, you should be able to get on a plane and come home, and no government should stop you. You should also not be forced to take something you don't put something else into your body. I don't want a government that can do that, so we're going to be pushing back. I acknowledge Kiwi Voice down here doing the video, and he's He's a bit of a living legend in this patch, and he's a start-up guy that just worked from his garage, set up his alternative media, and he just reports the truth. And he's sort of got more sophisticated. He does analysis, and he pulls things apart. He doesn't just report the news. He's part of the. So we rely on guys like him and the Daily Examiner and Chantel Baker and people like her to give us the truth, because we can't rely on our mainstream media. So we have to protect these people to keep giving us the truth. So we stand for democracy, equality and unity for all New Zealanders. We're a party, and we're going to be the conscience of the next government, and we want to put at the top of our priority is the unity and the bringing back together of our country and our people. Because these guys, these Labour guys, have created so much division and so much discrimination and so much suffering for average Kiwis in this country like you. I could not believe what I was seeing. So for me, I'm not against Labour, okay? I've got as many Labour supporters as I have National supporters as my members and Green supporters and that. I've got them all, right? I'm not against Labour because we've had some good Labour governments and we've had some bad ones. And we've had some good National governments and some bad ones. So it's not Labour, the movement, the political movement, it's just these guys. These particular guys in power now are rotten. They're corrupt and they're evil. Okay. And we don't use those words lightly because we've got the evidence. We don't have a free press. We do have free press. He's sitting down over there. He reports freely and openly and unbiased and balanced. That guy does. But our mainstream media, and not all of them, so I don't want to throw them all in the same boat, but we are not well served by our mainstream press at the moment. They are paid off propaganda tools of this government. And there's a few reasons how we can stop that. So third thing we need is professional law enforcement. So there's bad eggs in every basket. Like you have a rugby team, you always have a couple of guys that like to fight. The police force is no different. You've got a couple of rotten apples in there that like to beat people up. And those ones were on display on the day they rolled over and day 3. But you can't tar all the men and women in the police with that brush because most of the men and women in the police are good people. So it's very hard for me to just tar the whole police force just because of what happened at Wellington and a few issues around that. So I believe we have a reasonably good police force. They're just snowed under. They're like the health service and the education service. They are at breaking point because they don't have enough staff to do the job. How nuts is this? Our life's been turned on its head so much. You know, in the good old days when you used to cough to hide a fart? Remember that? And now it's the other way around. And it's kind of past. You remember the day, even a few months ago, you walked in a room, someone coughed, everyone went, oh, it's like a fired gun. Everyone's paranoid. Everyone's doing this instead of handshakes. Everyone's wearing masks. The paranoia that was in the room. But you know what? The elephant's in the room. It's a massive elephant, and there's a naked emperor. He's riding that elephant. That's how bad it is. But I think I'm preaching to the converted here because I think you guys know what's going on. She said that there were 23 drive-by shootings in New Zealand, which is the most we've ever had. So we've got gang violence, general gun violence, gang violence, the worst that we've ever had. We've got just people doing brazen ram raids on jewellery shops in the middle of the day in a mall. That used to be once a year, now it's happening once a weekend. So we're starting to lose control in this country. And with that in mind, the government, there were some bills proposed that, for example, if a paedophile moved within 5 kilometres of a school, you had to notify the school. They voted that down. They voted down the bill that said that forbid banning of gangs. Banned funding of gangs. They voted that down. They voted down my King Hit bill, my coward punch bill, which I had in my first term, which basically was a guy up north that was cut someone off in the street. He got followed home, he didn't see the guy, and he walked up his driveway and the guy came and smacked him in the side of the head and he fell over and died. And so I introduced a bill called the Coward Punch and had a 20-year penalty. And the Labour guys voted it down, and New Zealand First, they voted it down at the very first opportunity. They didn't even let it get to progress through the process and get improved or hear submissions from people or change it around and make it better. They just voted it down at the first reading. And when I asked my Labour mates, because I've got a couple, why they did that, he said, we didn't want you getting any kudos, Matt. So it was purely that. Because if I'd have got it, I was going to have a campaign with Joseph Parker and Israel Adesanya and a couple of other kickboxers. They were going to do a free campaign that we were going to run, which was going to be one punch can kill, and it was going to be targeted at men in their late teens, early 20s, and saying, effectively, you can punch someone once and kill them. And that was going to be a massive campaign, and they didn't want me getting any kudos, and that's a fact. They just break the law, and then they change the law, And then, oh, here we go. Don't try and sneak in. Don't try and sneak in. Lovely. Do a forward roll. Come on. Oi. Funding for media. Compulsory public disclosure of funding for media. Whistleblower legislation. They just upgraded the whistleblower legislation. It just got its royal assent in May. And what it does is that if you're in an organisation and you know something bad's happening, you can activate the whistleblower legislation and your career is protected. So it's quite a good thing, but I think it might stop them letting nurses and doctors back and teachers back in, the ones that have been mandated out, because they could then activate this whistleblower legislation because they know something bad's happening and they might cause a lot of problems for whoever it is. So I think this whistleblower legislation might be an impediment to some people getting back working, which is really bad, but that's what they'll do. Introduce binding referendum, you know. Yeah. So if you are going to do something major in this country, let the people decide. You know, give them the information and let them decide. Politicians don't like binding referendum because they don't trust these people. You know? But I believe, put all your cards on the table. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're proposing. Here's all the evidence, and put it to a vote. So every election we should have 3 or 4 referendum about whatever it may be, and make it binding, because we as Kiwis have that right. Some people say, for example, that we've gone down the path with the WEF and the UN and the World Health Organization and all those overseas unelected bodies that seem to be dictating to us how we live our lives, or our politicians are following their rule book. Yeah. Any incoming government does not have to follow what the previous government signed up to. So they're not bound by anything. So if we get back in, and we've got, all you need is politicians with ovaries, you know, and being non-sexist, they're balls, you know, to say we're not going to be dictated by these people. We're going to do what's right for Kiwis. That's all we need. And any incoming government, you got the giggles. Anyway, I'm trying not to be sexist here. That's why I said ovaries. Oh, ovaries are up here, aren't they? They're not down there. I'm anatomically challenged, I don't really know. Anyway, repeal any legislation that breaks the Bill of Rights. So there's a whole lot of bills they pass that breaches the Bill of Rights. So let's repeal them. And let's work our way backwards, and everything, revisit everything going back several years, and if it breaches the Bill of Rights, kick it to touch. So that means all the passes, the mandates, the checkpoints, the MIQ, all of that be gone, because those bills that brought that structure in were breaches of the Bill of Rights, and they just rolled on over us. If we give up our cash, they've got us. They've got us. They've got control of us. So we also don't want to go to a cashless society because I want a lot of tradies to vote for me and they do cashes. No, it's all about control. We've got to have cash. We've got to keep our cash. We never give it up. Yes, use your EFTPOS card and use the digital stuff, but we keep cash and we push back if any politician or political party tries to take the cash away, we fight them. Not literally, but we just don't even do it. No to carbon farming. You guys are easy to please. I'm just using logic and common sense here, and you guys like it. Yeah, it's amazing. So, and then we solve the problem. So I won't get any votes from foresters, but it's, you know, it's fine. Oh yeah. She's not meant to flick it up till I start talking. She's stealing my thunder, Sam. So for me, New Zealand is worth billions of dollars. That brand, All Blacks from New Zealand, Kiwis, it's worth billions of dollars to us, right? So I say to anyone that wants to change the name of the country, campaign on it, get a mandate, and then do a referendum. And we will soundly kick your ass. Because New Zealand is New Zealand. So, if we had a referendum and the country decided that Aotearoa was a good name, I would go with it because that's what the country decided. but I don't want it done by stealth, and they're doing a whole lot of things by stealth. They never mentioned it, they got the votes, fraudulently got the votes, and then they started introducing all this stuff by stealth. And that is not the way to operate, and we should punish them at the next election for that. Enshrine the Bill of Rights. For the next 5 to 10 years, the way to deal with it is just have politicians that honour the Bill of Rights and protect it. So we will not allow them to pass a bill in legislation that breaches the Bill of Rights, and I'll explain how we're going to do that. Take race out of everything. It's about need. So no policy, no laws that involve race. And it's a biggie, but I think it's where we need to go. Protecting the environment. So I live off-grid on a farm. I built a house off-grid, and I have a gravity-operated water pump, and from the beautiful freshwater spring that comes out the side of the hill, I fence off my waterways. I love the environment. I love my farm. I'm all about clean and green and sustainable. I'm as green as they come. Anyway, I'm all about protecting private property rights while protecting the environment. So we've got to protect SNAs. Half my farmers designated SNAs. I do not like government agents coming on my farm.
Good evening, Matt.
Where are you?
We're here, right?
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Yes. Good evening.
Good evening. You spoke about changing laws that were passed by Labour that you didn't agree with.
Changing what?
Changing laws. When the power changes, you can re-look at laws that have been passed.
Changing rules. Yes. Yep.
You didn't mention anything about the draconian gun laws.
Yes.
That punishing good gun owners
Yep.
Because
good on you.
it's done by a bad gun owner.
I love a question like that because I can get all the gun vote in one hit. So I'm a gun owner, I'm a farmer. Yeah, what happened was that there was a action and a reaction. There was the Christchurch massacre, and then all of a sudden there was a knee-jerk reaction, and politicians just reacted badly with bad law. So all that happened was law-abiding people were penalised, and none of the crooks stopped carrying their guns or anything. An online register, which they claim is going to solve everything, has never worked anywhere in the world. In fact, all it's done is been leaked sometimes and become a shopping list for crooks. So for me, there were some really good recommendations that they should have taken up. And that is, for example, if you're a sports shooter or you need a semi-automatic, you just got a higher grade of license, so a few more checks and a bit more security, and you could have that gun. And I could see ways that you could modify the gun laws to get the end result without encroaching on law-abiding gun owners. So that was just a really bad reaction and a really bad law where they didn't listen to what all the submissions said. They just reacted because of the horrific event that happened down here. So we're all for repealing it and using all the submissions that are already there. There was 10 or 20,000 submissions from gun owners and all kinds of people, and create a good, workable, practical law that everyone can live with. Any more questions? Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
A couple of weeks ago, my 14-year-old son and his friend were jumped by a group of about 12 youths outside the Christchurch police station.
Yep.
No one did anything.
No.
I asked him why he didn't fight back. He's trained in martial arts.
Yeah.
And
12 of them though. Yeah.
yeah, he didn't even defend himself. He said, no, I just stood there and took the punches. When I asked him why, he said, because Mum, if I started fighting back, what if they had weapons?
Yeah.
We have a major youth crime problem. What do you think the solution is?
Look, crime is always a result of the community, the environment that's happened, and there's a combination. Like you could have the huge police force with cops on every corner, and you're not going to stop crime, but you need a police force that can react to the serious stuff going on. But that is deep-seated violence that I've seen happening all around. As a copper, when I was young, when I first came out, it was 1993. And the only thing I had was a wooden baton in a hidden, concealed pocket of my pants and a set of handcuffs. And I was out on my own, working at night in rural New Zealand with no backup of our society. And There's no easy answers for it, but I can tell you this. Whenever I've talked to guys that have been in jail, like the really bad boys, and I've dealt with thousands or hundreds of them, you can guarantee when you get down and when you get to talk to them a bit, they've always had a really horrible upbringing. It's just a common thing. They either can't read or write, or they've been beaten up, or they've been neglected or abused. It's really, really common. You almost never meet someone that's a real bad crook that tells you that he had a really good mum and dad. Never. So yeah, so as a policeman, I used to see a lot of stuff where, for example, there was a guy that he was an alcoholic and he had a son that was about 6, 7, 8, and when he used to go to the pub, and his wife, I think she passed away, and he used to lock him in the dog kennel and go to the pub for 4 hours. And I didn't even know this. I found out about it later. And this guy, there's no way that if you get treated like that, you're ever going to turn out all right. And he started off doing cars and burglaries, and then he did an armed robbery, and he got a few years in jail for that. And then he came out and he abducted a woman and kidnapped her and raped her. And now he's doing a decent lag, and it's 150 grand a year to keep him in there. And I look at him and I go, if we could have intercepted him at the time when his dad was locking him in the dog kennel and got him out of there and spent some money on him because it would have been worthwhile, we could have saved millions of dollars down the track and all the victims that he's made in his time. So for me, that's that social investment policy, is targeting at-risk kids at a younger age to save a fortune later on down the track. And if you actually look at government departments, corrections, they have a funding budget and they think in a silo and they're just trying to save their money and spend them. But the guy that's going to end up there and spend at 150 grand a year, he at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, he might have had blue ear or lived in a terrible abusive home, or he might have had a health condition or not been sleeping or whatever. But there is an issue. If you address those issues there so he can get back into normal functioning and save millions of dollars later down the track, the same government that did that policy will not be in when the benefits come through. So governments have got to start thinking about the long term. And so that means having, I guess, middle management of all these different government departments talking to each other, and they can transition between governments. So they keep the same policy going because it works, and new incoming government carries on the same policy. And if we do that, we'll turn our country around. It'll take a while.